We are cracking open the Terminator vaults with Ian Nathan.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to James Cameron.
I almost bailed on being a filmmaker. It's about sitting in that big dark room with all those other people you don't know, and something's going to come up on that screen that's going to take you somewhere. I'm the king of the world!
Welcome back to James Cameron 101. I'm Eddie Green. Thank you for being here. And today we have somebody that is a returning favorite to the podcast. Just a good guy in general. Love to talk to this guy. And today we're talking Terminator, specifically because I invited him on for a roundtable discussion that I have not recorded as of yet. That's next week, but it's looking like the schedules would not have lined up for him to join. So he recommended, what if we just, kind of shoot the shit, as it were, just the two of us. And I was like, hey, I'm down for that. So before we bring him in, I just really quickly wanted to, this is actually kind of serendipitous that it all kind of worked out this way, because of course, Ian is one of his past credits is Empire magazine. And Empire is gearing up to release next week, I believe. Actually, the date I'm recording the T2 roundtable, funny enough, they are planning on releasing a brand new issue. I think it's the November issue, and it's going to be featuring the Terminator. It has a brand new interview with James Cameron and amazing covers and everything. So let's quickly take a peek at that, and then we're going to bring Ian in here. So here it is, Empire's 40 Years of the Terminator covers revealed. We're not going to read all of that, but just look at these covers here. This is, of course, the newsstand cover. This is the one that the general public will be able to pick up. The one I will be picking up. I'm not a subscriber, admittedly, to Empire. I like to just kind of pick and choose which issues I grab. But of course, this one is amazing. That alternative poster of Arnold from T1. Love it, love it, love it. And then, of course, this is the subscriber only cover. What is this? Illustrated exclusively by Van Orton. And it's kind of very neonish. Of course, the endoskeleton right there. So if you're a subscriber to Empire, that is the issue that you are going to be getting in the mail. Very, very cool. I might actually have to go on eBay at some point and find that. So, but there we go. Those are the covers. Just really quickly wanted to share that because, like I said, very, very serendipitous that it all worked out that way. But without further ado, let's not waste any more time. It's Ian Nathan.
Hi. Hi, how's it going?
Welcome back. Welcome back. So did you know that they were doing all of that stuff?
I didn't at all, actually. I have I do have good relations with Empire, and I see them occasionally, the guys. But I had no idea that they were going to do a 40th anniversary, and they got Cameron, and I think they've gone past and future, appropriately enough. I think they're both exploring the history of the film, but looking toward where it might go in the future, because Cameron, I think, as we all well know, has made hints that he has further plans for the franchise. So it's a good time. It's a good time to kind of be reinvesting in Terminatorhood.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, did you check out, because I know it released on Judgment Day. Did you see the new Netflix series, Terminator Zero?
I've not yet. No, it's sort of an anime style, isn't it? It's a very particular approach to it, but I've heard good things.
I believe this is the best thing since Terminator 2 3D. I always like to say T2 3D, Battle Across Time. And that's something also that I'm very happy about. If you caught a little read up there on that Empire description, they're even including a talk with, I think, Gary or Adam from T2 3D Battle Across Time, and they're going to do a little write-up on that as well. So I love seeing that T2 3D is kind of getting some more love. But Terminator Zero, it's the best thing since T2 3D. It's better than 3, 4, 5, 6, Sarah Connor Chronicles. It's so good. It's so good. So whenever you have some free time, when you're not at film festivals and stuff like that,
working away.
Yeah. So what are you working on before we get into some Terminator talk? What are you?
As we've talked about before, we've just sort of finished various different versions of Aliens Expanded. I've done a shorter cut of it as well for the future. So I've taken 4 hours and I've done it down to an hour 40, which has been a very strange process.
Wow.
and I'm starting work on a Thing documentary, The Thing Expanded. That's now rolling. And I'm doing some book stuff. I've got a Spielberg book coming out in a matter of a couple of weeks.
Yep.
And I'm just sort of about 3 chapters into a Scorsese book.
Wow.
Very different feel, but different challenge. But it's great. You know, I kind of live for just sort of opening myself up to the kind of the, you know, reading of these films and the loving of these films, understanding of them. So I kind of like it when I'm thrown something like Scorsese and I think, right, am I ready for this?
Right.
Can I really kind of put my brain into it?
Is there any, because if anyone looks at your body of work, is there any female director that you think you might cover at some point? Because
you know, I did a book on the Coppolas together, and I'd very much like to do Sofia Coppola as a separate book. I do love her work. I mean, she's at that point in her career, you know, I think when you do big careers like Spielberg and Scorsese, you do feel to a certain extent that you have to kind of move over a lot of really good films really quickly because you're doing 40-something films in each case. With someone like Sofia Coppola, and similar to like when I did Tarantino and Wes Anderson, you only have sort of 10 to 11 films you're dealing with. So you can luxuriate a bit more in the kind of the individual films. So I think that would be really nice with doing Sofia, because she hasn't done so many films that I can sort of really get into them. I mean, she's great. I love Jane Campion. I love Catherine Bigelow. I mean, these things they're commercially driven, like everything in the world. You know, what the publisher wants to do and what we think the market wants. So, you know, I can't indulge myself. They won't let me do that. So we have to kind of get a sense check of what the market wants and what it feels like. But yeah, I would hope so. I really do want to do something, you know, female at some point.
heck yeah. And I still have my fingers crossed. The very first time we talked on my Terminator 101 podcast, I think I asked you this. I have my fingers crossed for an M. Night Shyamalan book at some point from you. I need an M. Night Shyamalan.
He's good, isn't he? I mean, he's in such an interesting career as well. The way he's sort of got his own niche, not just in terms of genre, but in terms of actually how he makes the films and how he, you know, economizes them. You know, he's worked out how the studio system fails, spending far too much money. If you make a leaner film, you can be more adventurous and more original. Yeah. So he's really got something going on, for certain.
Yeah. And that's the key word, original. The fact that the guy is still to this day pumping out original films is, I mean, even if they're of varying degrees of quality, you still have to applaud the guy. The fact that they're original, you know? So, but next week you're at a film festival. That's when we're going to be recording the T2 round.
I am indeed. I'm taking Aliens Expanded to a science fiction film festival in Prague called Future Gate. They've got lots of films playing, and Terry Gilliam is going to be there. He's presenting of his old work. So it's really nice. It's a nice chance to sort of show the film in a different context and talk about it and talk about my career and go and see Prague. You know, so one of the kind of the benefits of what I do.
Is anybody like Jeanette Goldstein or anybody going to be attending?
No, it's sort of a bit more as a film festival. It's slightly more competition driven. So it's about the films they're playing. A lot of new science fiction films playing that are in competition. There's a kind of a band of student films that are going to be there. So I think it's as much about filmmaking and less there's sort of a bit of a historical bit. There's less sort of like a convention or that side of it. It's a bit more sort of cutting edge.
Wow. And I just got my package, the most recent episode of the podcast. I kind of fast forwarded it because I have a whole back catalog of stuff, but I instantly opened the package from Creator VC, and it was exciting to just see the documentary. Right? Do you have a copy of it? Like,
I don't have a copy yet. One's on its way apparently. So you held the Blu-ray, the box, before I have. You know, it's sort of I've had sort of check discs. I've not had a finished copy, so I'm a little bit jealous of everybody out there opening these boxes because I haven't got to yet.
Yeah, it was great looking, and I was expecting a traditional slipcover, but this has more of a, I don't know what you would call it, but like it's not a traditional slip. You know what I mean? It's almost like a case that it goes into. Very, very good packaging on it, and the patch was really cool. The posters I got to get framed at some point. I got to figure out where I'm going to put those. So, but just happy to have it. Just happy that.
It's kind of really nice, actually. It feels like this is the point you need to reach in the long journey of making it and testing it and the different versions we've had and getting to this point. We put the digital one out, and obviously that's the finished film. But this feels like the culmination. It's lovely to see the actual Blu-rays out there. It just feels more official, and you know, it's very special to be at this stage.
Yeah. So, Empire is covering Terminator.
Yeah.
Specifically T1, it appears. They're going to talk, I think, a little bit about the franchise as a whole, but it's really going to be zeroing in on the 84 film, because that is, of course, 40 years old, which insane to think, right?
It does get scary. All these anniversaries, you know. Yeah, I keep thinking, like, I saw that at the cinema. I was kind of like, my God, what's happening? Your life is flashing before you. But 40 years, that's just uncanny, isn't it? You know?
It's crazy. And I think the big takeaway from it, I read little bits and pieces of the interview that they scored with Cameron, which, by the way, do you even know who interviewed him?
I don't. I honestly say I don't know. I didn't know they were going to do this. So
wow.
Yeah, and Nick, who's the editor there, he's very good, and I think he would probably be the guy who would have done it. I would have thought he would have pulled rank and gone off to do him, and he would have been a good choice. Nick's a very good writer.
I'm looking forward to it because the big chunk of this is what's going on with the future of the franchise, and apparently Cameron is working on something. I don't know if it's similar to what he was doing with Dark Fate, where he was helping to write the story, but then that was pretty much it, and he produced. I don't know how involved he's going to be with this. Do you have any kind of...
No, I honestly don't. I would hope that he may have learned a little bit from Dark Fate, that you can't do half measures. You've got to be invested. I wouldn't have thought he's going to direct it, whatever it is, because I think he's got Avatar films to finish, and he announced Ghost of Hiroshima. There's a future project. So it sounds to me like that he may bring someone on. In a way, I hope they almost reboot or restart. How much you can use Arnie, at the age, brilliant as he is and wonderful as he is, he's too old now, really, to play the Terminator. Unless there's some spin Cameron's got on that. I don't know. So it'd be great to have just the same universe, the same aesthetic. I love it to be back in LA, because I think LA is crucial. It's an LA story. But yeah, with new characters and a new version of the Terminator that's similar to Arnie, and just thought out, that the whole thing is, because those first two films, the Cameron films, are so beautifully thought out. They're so well written. He's thought of every dynamic within them. And then all the subsequent ones are just a bit thrown together. So I really want it to be properly written. And the guy to do that is James Cameron.
Right. And hopefully, I don't know that he has. I've talked to the composers of Terminator Zero. I asked them, do you know, has Cameron seen that at all? Because it's kind of coincidental that Terminator Zero came out right around the time that this was announced, that he was working on another Terminator thing. And they said, we don't think he's seen it, and that's probably for the best, so that he, is not being influenced too much.
Yeah.
But I think once you do see Terminator Zero, Ian, you're going to realize, like I did, because there is no Sarah, there is no John. It is totally different characters, and it works. And just putting aside the fact that it's anime, because that was I was hesitant with that. The story works. And it's so good. It's so good. So I think Terminator Zero proves that you don't need Arnold. You don't need Sarah Connor. You don't need John Connor. You can do something entirely different and have it be a success, because it's almost universally praised, Terminator Zero, And so hopefully he, at some point, maybe takes a peek at it and, not like copies, but goes, okay, we can definitely move past Arnold. And that's what I was getting from the Empire interviews. He was talking a little bit about how, I think, paraphrasing, I think we need to get past Arnold. And even Arnold has said, right, I'm done with Terminator. I think he said that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, the problem is if you whatever you do with Arnold, with the best will in the world, it's going to be a kind of corny thing. Yeah, whatever, if you use de-aging effects, whatever kind of contrivance you can come up with. He plays the doctor who invented, the Terminator machine, and he's an old human guy. It's all just going to be contrived and a bit of an in-joke. So I think if the movie's going to be good and the progression of the franchise is going to be good, you just don't want that kind of gimmickiness in it. You need to sort of free it up, as you say, maybe the way Terminator Zero's gone, just to be a great piece of storytelling.
Yes. And do you think it's gonna, we're in 2024, do you think we're gonna get anything between now? Because I think the best thing would do is maybe wait until 2029 comes around and then put it out, maybe? Or do you think it's gonna be sort of, they're gonna try to, I don't know, in the next couple of years, rush it out?
I mean, all of this really depends on how far along Cameron is with it. Has he been working on this for the last few years? This has been an ongoing project because you needs to be ready. He is very tied up with the next two Avatars. So what kind of time he has to spend on it, I don't know. And then, as we said, is there a filmmaker he has in mind? Is it even going to be a film? Is it going to be a series? You were all saying it's probably going to be a feature film because that's what Cameron does, but he may not go down that road. So it really all depends on what shape the project is in right now.
Right.
And if it's still scripting, conceptual, kind of let's get everyone involved, let's get going stage, then I would thought there's probably 3 or 4 years away. But you never know. Films can come together very quickly, as much as other films can take a long time.
Right. Right.
We shall
someone with that announcement of Hiroshima, I was reading somewhere, I don't know if it's a joke or not, but someone said that he's going to wait until the 100th anniversary of that, which I think would be 2045, 2046. And it's like, do you know how old Cameron's going to be?
That's nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I think. I think he is itching maybe to make something different, to get out from underneath the shadow of Avatar. And it's been a great triumph. I'm sure it will carry on being a great triumph for him, but it's quite a hermetic, it's quite a sealed universe to work in. And I wonder whether he just feels he wants to get out there and do something that he's not done before, which Ghost of Hiroshima might be. And still carrying his themes,
right.
Nuclear war has always been a great Cameron theme. Now to tackle it, in an Oppenheimer kind of way almost, with a great deal of realism and in maybe a temperature of film we've not had from him before, that isn't expected to make, $2 billion, that is pushing his own talents as an artist so it doesn't have just be, cool stuff. It doesn't just have to be thrill rides. I can do something about grief and survival and, man's capacity to destroy himself. And, it's John Connor, isn't it? We're not going to make it, are we? And Ghost of Hiroshima, I think, will really be a kind of an ode to that kind of look at the world and his philosophy. So of everything he's doing, that excites me the most, I think.
Same. Yeah. And I am trying desperately to talk to, I believe his name's Charles Pellegrino, the guy who wrote the books. I'm trying to get him on because it's big news and like you said, I love Avatar. I do. I love Avatar, but this was like, wow, okay. I honestly thought Avatar was going to be the final thing that Cameron ever did. And it's so refreshing to hear that, okay, it's not going to be the last thing he does. It's going to maybe be this very, like you said, Oppenheimer. I never even thought of that, but maybe that kind of pushed him a little bit, because him and Nolan are buddies, right?
Yeah. And I think, I think he's got to a stage in his career where his legacy is a factor. He's an older guy. And I think he might look back across him, and I think this is true. He doesn't get credited as an artist. He doesn't get discussed in filmmaking terms. He gets discussed in terms of the money he makes, or in terms of the technology he develops and pioneers, or it gets discussed in terms of franchise and science fiction and the films himself, Terminator and Aliens and all the kind of films we love. But he doesn't get talked about in the way that Nolan gets talked about, or even Spielberg gets talked about, as artists, people who tell stories with images, that create shots and pull performances out of actors, the art of a director. And I wonder whether there's a part of Cameron who thinks, he may have won best film, with Titanic, but he still wants that credibility. I think he still wants to have the discussion be, what am I like as truly as a filmmaker? And Ghost of Hiroshima might be that avenue.
And somebody also brought up a great point. Ghost of Hiroshima, Hiroshima, it doesn't fall in line with how he loves to use films that start with a T or an A. And so, and so they were like, but isn't the original book called To Hell and Back? So there you go. It starts with a T. So maybe it'll be called To Hell and Back. I don't know. But
I think hopefully he'll stick with Ghost of Hiroshima. He needs to break free of all these things, and just
T and the A.
make his film in,
right
as it should be. And
yeah,
it's interesting and it's exciting just to hear him have a lot of different things. Because like you, I thought he's going to be trapped in this Avatar thing forever, and that'll be it. And that felt like a shame to me. As successful as those films are, I kind of wanted more.
Yeah. So we'll see. Hopefully it's this next Terminator thing. Hopefully, I want it now because I just want new Cameron stuff. But I don't know. There's sort of a romantic thing. Like, what if it releases in 2029? Like they wait until 2029 because that's such an important date in the whole Terminator franchise. It's constantly
Well, you think about his Avatar timing. So we won't see Avatar 3, Fire and Ash, I think it's called, until Christmas 2025. So Avatar 4 then is going to be Christmas 2027. If he even moves on to Avatar 4. So he's not going to get this film done until 2029, really, just in terms of space. That's unless he really does just step back and give it, the Terminator franchise to somebody else.
Right.
I don't know. You kind of think he needs to take a central part in it, because Dark Fate was a disappointment, and I think he was too busy doing Avatar really to manage that. So, it'd be hard, I think, for whoever steps into that space to make a film with James Cameron as your boss, make a Terminator film.
Right.
Maybe you got a young guy inside the camp, who's been readying it. I don't know.
Now, I initially wanted to the meat of this particular episode was supposed to be specifically T2, but I don't think I've ever asked you, what is, if I just put you on the spot right now, ranking all 6 films. Can you do that? Can you rank all 6 of the Terminator films from your favorite to least?
Yeah. So my least favorite, I'm trying to think. There's a Genesis is probably my least favorite.
Yep.
It was just a mess, wasn't it? I like the grey hair on Arnie, I suppose, but the rest of it was kind of a mess. Then I think probably Dark Fate, which I thought was pretty wretched.
Wow.
And I just thought that as soon as you kill off John Connor at the beginning in a casual way, you're not working hard enough as a film. You're just getting rid of things. You're scrubbing things out. I didn't like that.
Which is funny because apparently that was a Cameron idea.
Yeah.
To kill off John Connor immediately.
Yeah, I don't know what he's thinking. Well, we'll have it out someday. Then I'd come to. Let's try and think. Then it's probably Salvation. Although I have a little bit of time for Salvation. It was an attempt to do something different, and there are some nice visual things to it. It has an intensity that kind of works. I think it doesn't all get. It's still a flawed film, but I like the idea that it was still an LA film, just an LA film, into the dystopian future. So, and the conflict of the character who discovers he's a Terminator, that's nice. That seems an obvious way to go, but it was a good way to go. And then we come to the three, the Arnie ones, really. So I would then go Terminator 3, which, isn't great, but it has some good stuff in it. And at least Arnie is kind of Arnie in it. And then when it comes to the Cameron ones, I go Terminator 2. Terminator 2 is my favorite, but it's a very fine margin. And I don't like doing top favorite lists because you start making distinctions like that. And, I get to have both. And in some ways, the original Terminator is the far more ambitious, exciting, revolutionary film and seminal film. And Terminator 2, the kind of the perfect sequel. It's the aliens to Alien of that franchise. But I love the storytelling of Terminator 2. I think it's the prowess of what Cameron does is that how he brings all this technology and all this money and all this incredible sort of stunt work, yet it's all beholden to how he tells a story and how the characters interact. And there's wit and emotion, and you're just carried along. And it's Arnie's best performance, I think, of his career in Terminator 2. It's kind of great work. So that's the order I'd go in. But I do love the original Terminator.
Heck yeah. Have you seen Sarah Connor Chronicles?
I've seen some of it. I've not seen all of it. Again, a valiant attempt to try and sort of inject something into it. Overcomplicated. The problem with doing these kind of stories is you end up answering questions that haven't been asked. It's the prequel, sequel problem, in that there's a lovely sort of cleanness of storytelling, a sort of directness that exists in the original two Terminator films. That is, this is a franchise problem as a whole. As soon as you keep making more and more and more, it gets messy. It gets ideas get thrown in, and the Aliens franchise shows you this. And the Alien Romulus works so hard, bless it, to get all the different elements and all the different takes and get them into under control. I'm not quite sure it does, but I respect it for trying, because it becomes a kind of chaos, a sort of bag of spanners. There's a bit of this and a bit of that. And I think Sarah Connor Chronicles sort of is an example of that. It's just an extra sort of spanner in the works, and the lovely cleanness of storytelling disappears.
Yeah. And then of course T2 3D. That I always like. I always like to include that. So, and I know you've seen it. So, yeah. Where if I say now include T2 3D, where are you putting that?
Well, I find it hard to include, only in the sense that I think it works differently. It's a kind of theme park, experience. So it doesn't have a feature film texture, but it is fun that it's Sarah, John, and the T800, and it's a little gimmicky, inevitably, but it's fun. So I put it in probably sort of fourth or fifth. I don't think it's as thorough as maybe Salvation and T3, but it's fun, certainly.
That's so, because I love that you kind of approach it more from the actual story. I rank it literally. So for me, it's T1 is my favorite, T2 is number 2, and then number 3 is T2 3D. And I just literally rank it that way because those are the only 3 that Cameron directed.
Yeah.
So that's literally why it's my third favorite, is because at least he still directed. But I agree with you. It's incredibly gimmicky. It's the fact that it is a theme park.
1 million or something at the end, the big spider thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's for all of its, gimmicks and stuff. I still think it's at least that future war film element that we get. I think that's better than whatever Salvation gave us. And I think it's light years better than Arnie putting on the Elton John glasses and Rise of the Machines.
I get you.
But as a whole, maybe Rise of the Machines is probably the better.
It has project. I thought the ending is better thought out.
Oh yeah.
In that sense of mankind's folly, and it's almost a little bit, like Planet of the Apes, isn't it? It's a kind of really bleak 70s ending to quite a gimmicky film in its own right, T3. I mean, the female Terminator is just such an obvious thing to do. I mean, she's good. She works hard. But and the stunts are good. Mosto's a good director of stunts and that stuff. And it's LA again, which I think is important. But it's not Edward Furlong, and it's not, it's not Cameron. So it's not as good.
It's not Cameron. And I always had a problem with Arnie in that film because I always felt that he was, for lack of a better term, an a-hole in the whole film. And I always attributed that to the fact that Cameron wasn't involved. So I thought Arnie was on autopilot. But I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about that. And one of the co-hosts said, well, think about it this way, because there's a moment where he chokes John Connor. Like, he literally chokes him and, says, you're not the guy I came back for, or something like that. And I always had issues with that. But this co-host made a good point. They're like, in T2, he's the father figure to John Connor. In T3, he's the drill sergeant to John Connor. And when they said that, I said, okay, maybe that's what they were going for. And I just attributed it to the fact that Cameron wasn't involved, so Arnie was on autopilot and didn't really want to be there. But when you think of it as a drill sergeant, it kind of makes sense why he's kind of a prick throughout the whole movie to John Connor, It
makes sense. It does.
Yeah. I didn't think it would, I never gave it credit to be that thought out.
It's kind of like, again, it's one of those interesting themes that, again, to sort of break down as the franchise goes on, is that what Arnie brings to each film is important. What he represents in each film is important. And as soon as he becomes like a side act, you lose that kind of centrality. You lose the idea that, number one, he's the assassin. Number two, he's the hero, father figure. Three, as you say, the drill sergeant, trying to sort of nurse the future into action. And then beyond that, it's, you kind of lose a sense of Genesis. I don't know what was going on. And they did. And then by Dark Fate, he's a joke. He's a gag about curtain sales, and he's become a human. And you're like, well, you've lost the thematic strength of what you had. Even if he was aging, and I get the aging thing, because what else can you do? I thought you could have created an interesting character out of him, and they didn't.
Right. I always love the fact that he accomplishes his mission, and then because the way Cameron put it is, well, now what happens when a Terminator accomplishes the mission? That's always the question. What happens if that happens? And in Dark Fate, I kind of like, even though the drape thing, like that, I don't know what that was, the whole him becoming a drape guy, but the fact that he kind of gains, remorse and starts to form a family and I found that interesting. But do you think that is like in your head, a Terminator accomplishes its mission? What do you think? Like, if you were
my take would be that, given it's time travel and given they're sent back, I think it's a one and done. So I think after they completed the mission, they shut down.
They shut down.
They just, they're programmed to do one thing, and then it's just hardware. Yeah, and that's the end of the matter. Which then presents interesting things that T2 suggests, that the bits and pieces of a Terminator can be used and corrupted. So finding an old broken Terminator is an interesting place to start. And what happens if you reboot him? And all those kind of avenues. But I didn't never imagine he would live a kind of life as a human being and sell grapes.
And like start feeling remorseful, like, like I'm sorry that I did that. And then by the end, he says, for John, and then he falls and it's
not earned that emotion. Whereas in T2, it earns everything. I understand why you cry. I understand why you have tears, and you get that. And Cameron always said about Terminator 2, so I'm going to make you cry for a Terminator. That was his challenge he set himself at the beginning, and he does that. It's an absurd challenge if you think about it. This ice cold killing machine. And he goes, what am I going to do with the second one? I'm going to make you cry for him. I'm going to turn him into Bambi. It's like, it's a brilliant, conceptual idea, conceit. But to get there is miraculous.
It is.
It is a journey.
And the interesting thing about it is everybody cries when he does the thumbs up at the end. And I admit that is very heartfelt. And you bet your bottom dollar that when Arnold really dies in real life, that's all you're going to see on the news is people showing clips of him going down in the thing and putting the thumbs up. And they're going to play that endlessly. But the moment in T2 that gets me really emotional is when Sarah goes to Miles and is trying to kill him and enters the house, and the son is like covering Miles, begging and pleading, "Don't do this to my dad." And she's like, she has this epiphany of what she's turned into. That's the moment that always gets me, when she backs up and she's you know, shh, 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 like telling them to be quiet and like that's the moment that always now hits me even harder than the thumbs up at the end of the film.
Yeah, so, it's a great example of, again, Cameron's sort of analysis of humanity, which goes on throughout his films, in the sense that she's right. You know, the greater good is for her to kill him. You know, she's absolutely right. You know, she's trying to save humanity. She's not, you know, she's not being evil at all. But what Cameron understands about the individual, about how we are programmed, as it were, as human beings, is, you know, unless you're psychotic or something terrible is happening in your brain, you can't do it. You can't bring yourself to kill, no matter what the righteous cause, no matter what the benefit. In that moment, in the individual moment, we can't do it. You know, there's a philosophical test, a thought, the idea that, you know, if you have given someone like their finger over a button that will kill 10,000 people, unless you shoot a person right in front of you, you know, what would you do? You know, would you rather press the button or shoot the person in front of you? And it's probably easier to press the button, kill 10,000 you don't see than the one you do see, because that's how we're wired. And I think that's just a great touch of Cameron's, that, you know, what's the difference between a Terminator and a human being? Is a human being can't terminate, no matter how important the mission. She can't do it, and I think that's kind of great.
Yeah, it is. And that's, you know, again, Dark Fate is a mixed bag for me, but that's another thing I love about the evolution of Sarah in that film. How Linda came back, and we're talking T2 and her about to do what she's doing. By the time you get to Dark Fate, if that is canon in your head, man, she is gone, in terms of, you know, the fact that she lost John.
Yeah.
And now she is this is all she lives for. She, like, she was an alcoholic, they say, and she went through a big depression. So I kind of like that evolution of the character as well, which is why it's so unfortunate that Dark Fate is mixed, because it does present really interesting ideas. But overall it is really a shoot and a miss kind of thing. So hopefully this new thing that Cameron's working on, like you said at the top, hopefully he really did learn all the mishaps from Dark Fate, and now he can apply that to whatever this is going to be called. Shoehorning in your book here, do you plan on writing anything else Terminator in the future?
Not in the immediacy. I've done Cameron, I've done Terminator Vault, I've done a lot of alien stuff and alien stuff. There's a thought, and it's only a thought at this stage, that documentary-wise, Terminator could be a good place to go in the future. Probably 1 and 2 together, with an expanded format. Again, don't leap on that. That's very conceptual. We've got a thing to do and thoughts, but we've had those conversations that that'd be good. We got on very well with Cameron. We got on very well with Gale Ann Hurd. That's a great place to start, with those two involved if they want to be. And then, you want to get Arnie and Linda and everyone, Michael Biehn and everyone and bring that together. And, it would be a different kind of film as well, because they're different kind of films, doing 2 in 1, and we're having a discussion about franchises, about how it went on and started to fail, and just what is so poetic really about those first 2 films in storytelling terms. This is one of a sense of loop that Cameron seems to enjoy, that the end of the story is almost inherent in the beginning of the story, and it spins in on itself. And I love all that. There's such a neatness to how he does things.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how that sounds. Terminator expanded. That just it has a good ring to it. So work on the thing, finish up the thing. Everybody's excited for the thing. And this is your first time really kind of diving into, like, you don't have a Carpenter book, do you?
No, so
This is your first real dive into
never
Carpenter.
really written about Carpenter at all, except a bit in passing to do with Alien and obviously his place in the kind of build up to that franchise.
What was that interview like?
Fan, loved his work and reviewed some of it but never properly engaged on this level with a Carpenter film. So very exciting on that level.
What was the interview like with him? Without, I mean, you don't have to tell me what he spoke about, but like,
yeah, it's interesting. Personality dictates a lot in terms of the film you make and the book you write. They are very sort of dictated to by the style of person. And Cameron is, he is a great raconteur. He is a storyteller. He understands kind of what the interview process needs. And it's not that Carpenter doesn't, but Carpenter is more of a cynic. He's a little more embittered, but also very passionate. And, so tells a different story. And, he's quite protective. He's very protective of not giving away the answers because he feels that kills the film. If he said to me, this is what's going on at the end, this is the child's, McCready, this is the answer. He said, that's the end of the debate. That's the end of the discussion. So he said directly, I am not going to answer any of those kind of questions. I am not going to give you, the kind of the gospel according to the thing, because he wants it open-ended. That's the point of the film, is that we never know and never will know, exactly what happened. And I thought that was very interesting. I mean, we can, on the documentary, we're going to go all around it and talk about it and come up with ideas about what's going on. But the fundamental truth is that no one's going to confirm it. Certainly not Carpenter. And he's very funny as well, in a kind of more darker way. But he is funny, and he loves it when you talk about Howard Hawks and the background and the kind of 50s element of science fiction he put into it. So, yeah, and I like the fact he's different because the thing is a different film to Aliens. So you want a different approach. It's a much more paranoid film. It's a much more 70s style film. I know it's 1982, but it's got that 70s vibe. So I enjoyed the fact that he wasn't just like Cameron, that it was a little harder work. It was. And that's all for the good.
And no tea cart story. That tea cart story with Cameron is literally my favorite thing, maybe that he's ever been asked about and talked about. And it's one of my favorite moments in the documentary.
Yeah, it's funny. It was, you never know exactly what you're going to get, and you never know exactly what mood the person's going to be in. And when it's someone like James Cameron, they will call a halt to the whole interview whenever they want. They are controlling the situation. I mean, he's very generous with his time, and he was very generous. But it wasn't until I was 3 or 4 questions in, and I could feel his good mood. I could feel his humor, and the fact he seemed to be enjoying it and getting into it. And I thought, I can go there. I can ask because he's responding. And I just went, can you tell me about the tea lady? And he laughed and then as you see in the documentary, he launched into the story. And as he was telling it, I just thought, I'm going to put this in as a whole. I'm just going to do the whole thing because we trimmed a little bit, I think, some ons and ers. But apart from that, it's absolutely as he told it, verbatim. And sometimes in documentaries, you don't need the clips, you don't need the photos or the added visuals. Sometimes it's just someone telling you a story is exactly what you need, and you just let him do it. And it's a lovely little centerpiece in Aliens Expanded.
And hopefully that didn't get, like you said, you trimmed a lot for this new edition. Hopefully that is intact.
It's still there. It's a little tighter than it was I do the proper cut of Aliens Expanded is the one you have. It's the 4 hours 17, 5 hours if you include the credits. And that is the proper cut of the film. That is the official cut. We've done a smaller version because there might be opportunities for, cinema runs or festival runs or even television really where the watcher won't be like you. They will be a more casual Aliens fan, science fiction fan. They will not be, the hard and fast true Aliens fans, which the longer cut is for. By all means, I'd love to have you watch it and know what you think. It's a very different kind of feel. It's much faster, of course. We sort of reorganized it, and there's some nice things about it, I think. But no, what you have, in your little box that arrived the other day, that's the official cut.
Now, I know we'll wrap it up here, keep it at the 45 minutes. But do you think, had you approached Carpenter with Halloween expanded, do you think he would have given you the interview? Because I feel like he's pretty Halloweened out at this point.
Yeah. I don't know, to be honest. I think we knew The Thing was the choice because they're brilliant as Halloween is. I think there's more to say in The Thing. Plus, I think expanded works really nicely in this kind of border country between science fiction and horror, that it gets the best of both genres, which films like Aliens and The Thing, and to an extent the Terminators do as well. I mean, the Terminator, the original film, is Cameron's riff on Halloween. It's just his take on Halloween. You look at the two films, and they're pretty similar. One's a robot from the future, the other one's Mike Myers. So they're great influence from Carpenter on Cameron. But I think The Thing had more to it in the sense of where we could go. And because there's been so many sequels and reboots and Halloweenness going on, it felt a little exhausted. Plus, with the In Search of Darkness films that David Weiner's doing, the pure horror is kind of his field and his area, and he's done Halloween. So it never came up that we would ever do it that way. I don't know. Carpenter's, he's an interesting guy. He may well have kind of got into it.
And I love that it's because Cameron was saved for like the end of the campaign, the crowdfunding campaign. He was one of the last people announced as like, guess who we got? We got James Cameron. What's interesting with The Thing expanded is right out of the gate, we got John Carpenter.
And some of that's serendipity, some of it's just the fates and the timings. Some of that's really, if you look at the two guys, Cameron is enormously busy. He's making a lot of films. So his windows of opportunity are fewer than for Carpenter, who's not as busy. So sometimes it's about that. I also think there's an element of, we got Carpenter because we got Cameron. He looked at Aliens Expanded and saw where we were coming from and the level we were operating on. I'm not saying that was entirely why he did it, but he would have seen that and gone, okay, they mean what they say, these guys. They're serious. They've got James Cameron. So there is a kind of halo effect, a kind of knock-on effect that helped us get Cameron. But in the end, it's a little bit luck of the draw. It's about people's diaries. It's about what's going on in their careers. And you just get lucky. Sometimes it comes in the beginning. Sometimes you're lucky because it comes in at the end with Cameron.
Right. Well, look, we could talk for hours here, but I want to respect the time that you asked for. So I hope that you're okay that it wasn't really T2, like it just
That's
sort
fine.
of was diagonal.
We'll have to do it again. We'll have to do another, Terminator discussion down the line.
I think because once we started rolling with the 40 years, and then I realized I don't think I ever asked for a ranking, and then I wanted to tell you about Terminator Zero. I kind of realized we're just going to be doing this the whole time. So, but it's always a pleasure to talk with you. I love having you on anything I do. So, and I'll make sure I have the T2 watch along linked down below, because about a year and some change ago, we did a T2 watch along that Ian participated in. So, if you do, and I'm talking to you, the listener watcher, if you do want to hear Ian really kind of nerd out about T2, that's really where that's going to be located, because it's the entire film, basically like this. We're all watching the movie. So I'll make sure I have that link down below. I'll have Aliens Expanded link down below, The Thing Expanded, Terminator Vaults. Unfortunately, you can't get anymore. You have to go on like eBay and spend $200. So
it's out of print, I'm afraid.
But that's got to feel good though, kind of in a way, like your book is sought after, So, but thank you for coming on. You'll be back at some point like Arnold. And until next time, everybody, go watch a Cameron film.